For most of my life, I've lived with the idea that if there's no pain, there's no gain. And that the only way for you to be successful is to do the things that suck. Like, look for things that are painful, will cause a lot of suffering, and then do them. And this came from the perception that when I was young, I used to be the complete opposite. I was fat, I was lazy, I was just doing what felt good at that moment, not thinking of what opportunities pain could give me in the future. It's funny, I even remember that time when I pretended to have asthma in basketball practice. And I love basketball. I love playing it. I love like shooting the ball and running when you're playing. But when it comes to the part where you have to train and you have to do a lot of drills and sprints, I was out. And so I pretended to have asthma just so I could get out of the practice, and I never showed up again. And because I felt like I missed a lot during that time, I dove right into pain in 2020. I started looking for things that were painful, such as working out, reading, writing, things that could discipline me and make me feel like I'm achieving something. And that's when the callus in my mind really started to form, where it's like, I need to do what's painful. And I think there's a real merit to that. I think that there's a time for you to be disciplined and a time for you to lock in. But I think instead of thinking about no pain, no gain, I think a more timeless and all-encompassing principle is to look for something that's meaningful and do it regardless of the pain. Because recently I have built a business that has been very, very stressful. And I've been feeling demotivated. And I was just whipping myself into working for the business because, again, no pain, no gain. I just had this idea that, I just gotta keep going and I will succeed. But it just felt wrong. It felt like my energy was being sapped away by the business. Whereas when I did what was painful before, like working out and reading and writing and doing stuff that were painful but gave me energy, I felt motivated. It actually made me feel better. But this one, forcing myself to send DMs and to pitch people and to create marketing funnels, it just took energy away from me. And I just got burned out with whipping myself and trying to force myself to work, thinking that if there's no pain, there's no gain. Which is why I've been exploring the idea of, instead of looking for something that's painful and then doing what sucks, look for a purpose that would motivate you to wake up every day, to get out of your bed and work even if it's painful. Because then the pain would be offset by that purpose, right? And this is a lesson that popped up recently in one of my podcasts, my most recent podcast with Jack Moses. And I actually wanted to share with you 9 lessons that I learned from that podcast, or reflections that I got from that podcast, because I think that that podcast really impacted me in a deeper level. For people who don't know, Jack is a creator, writer. He's also a spiritual guide. He's also a retreat host. And he is a football player. So he's a lot of things. And it's very contrarian to what people would say in the internet space, where you need to niche down and you need to focus. That's where I was at when I was burning out with my business. And talking to Jack confirmed my suspicions. So I'm going to share with you guys 9 lessons. The first takeaway that I got from him is that you need to build products that solve your own problem. Meaning you need to build for yourself. Because this is from Naval. He talks about how the way for you to escape competition and to stop thinking of the market, stop overthinking of how to position yourself, is to just solve your own problem and then sell that solution. That's what Jack's doing right now. He's actually preparing for a football season. And so he's creating a cohort where they will be accountability buddies, and it will allow him to lock in for that preparation for the season while also helping other people, which is awesome. And a great example of a very successful entrepreneur that did this as well was Steve Jobs. What Steve Jobs did was, I forgot exactly what was happening, but there was a moment in the Steve Jobs movie where he was with a girl and the girl had a Walkman. I don't know if they were dating or they were related, but basically it was a conversation with a girl. They were having an argument and the girl was walking out with her Walkman. Steve Jobs noticed that the girl had so much cassette tapes carrying around. And so she talked to the girl and she was like, what if I told you that I could put 1,000 songs in your pocket without you carrying all those around? And then the woman was like, I'd say you're crazy. And I'm not entirely sure if that's accurate. I just remember that in my head because it was just an iconic scene. But basically that was the start of the iPod. And that's what inspired Steve Jobs to create the iPod, which then led to the iPhone and the iPad and basically the Apple Store, right? And it's just amazing to think about how no one ever thought of that. No one ever thought of creating a device where you can store your music without carrying a bunch of cassette tapes. But Steve Jobs thought about it because he was solving a problem that was personal to him. He had a relationship with the woman who needed it, and he solved the problem and sold the solution. So I think that's a very valuable thing for entrepreneurs, a very valuable lesson for entrepreneurs who are trying to build offers is to build something that you would buy for yourself. It's also a very critical lesson from Charlie Munger. It's very easy. Just sell something that you would buy for yourself. I think that's a very important lesson. The second lesson that I learned from him is if you put your vision, as we were talking about earlier, if you put your highest self, your purpose as the forefront of everything, then all the pieces will fall into place because you are just moving towards your purpose, your highest vision. So regardless of the pain and the confusion, you are locked in on what you want to do. So there is a driving force in your decision making, in your actions, in basically everything that you are, every action that you take, there's a driving force towards it. And this reminds me a lot of Nietzsche's, he who has the why can bear anyhow. Because when you know why you are pursuing something, it doesn't matter how you will get there. You'll figure it out. But that why needs to be really, really strong. It needs to be something that you're willing to die for so that you can live for it. That's the powerful thing about a vision, a strong vision, and a strong why. That's the second lesson. The third lesson would be more of the actions that you take already, not just the vision. So when you are looking for something to do, when you're not sure on what to do with life, another podcast that I had with Dan West is to just think of what will bring you the most amount of energy at that moment. So instead of thinking too much about what you need to do, what is your schedule, what's your calendar, all that stuff, just think about what would give you energy at that moment. Whether it's sleep, it's eating, working out, having a conversation. For example, this video that I'm making for you guys is actually very impulsive. It's out of nowhere. I just created it for the sake of it. But I know that it will give me energy. It will give me insights in my life. And to be honest with you, it doesn't matter to me whether this will go viral or not. I just want to do this for the sake of doing it. It's a very playful way of me to do this. I just want to play around with the idea of recording a video. And I just enjoy it. And I am energized right now. So instead of scheming for something to get a result, follow the energy and focus on the process. That's the third lesson. The fourth lesson is more of a technical type of lesson in terms of business, because Jack and I are both ghostwriters, former ghostwriters. He's a former ghostwriter. I still have ghostwriting clients, so we have that overlap. But Jack Moses talks about how if you're in the online space, don't be just a writer. Stack your skills. So this conversation came up because I talked about how the market is becoming more sophisticated, especially with AI. Because a lot of people, but I mean market, the ghostwriting market is becoming more sophisticated because AI is basically replacing ghostwriters. So a lot of people are able to create content out of nowhere because you can just plug your stuff on ChatGPT and then ChatGPT will make a post and you can post that. And of course, there are nuances there. ChatGPT is not really that good at invoking emotion. It's really good at formulating the posts, but there's just some sort of rawness that you miss when a person is writing than when ChatGPT is editing. And so, but that's not very apparent to people. Some people would not say it's a big deal. And so how do you position yourself against AI or the other writers? And what I did personally was that I stacked my skills in terms of I'm not just a ghostwriter. I help you build your community. I help you launch your offers, build your offers even, create the funnels, create your lead magnets, set up your DMs. I basically position myself as a growth partner in your business because I no longer just take care of social media. I do my best to make sure that your business is thriving. And so that's a fourth lesson. The fifth lesson is that authenticity is the algorithm. A lot of people are trying to go viral on social media, and I think there are plenty of ways for you to do that. I think the best way to really stand out with your personal brand is be your own person, is to not think too much of the trends, not think too much of what's hot, but think of who do you want your audience to look up to? What type of message do you want your audience to remember? And what type of behavior do you want to change? Because at the end of the day, content is emotional, meaning it puts things into motion. And you don't want to be the person who is being put into motion. You don't want to be the person who is being influenced by the algorithm. You want to be the person who is influencing the algorithm. And so when you put your authentic self out there, then you are becoming the trend. You are setting the trend for whoever taps your profile, whoever watches your content. You are becoming your own brand rather than another noise in the social media sphere. And that's why I think authenticity is the algorithm. So that's the fifth lesson. The sixth lesson is that to beat burnout, you just have to be more curious. I love this topic that we talked about with Jack because he showed me how, he reminded me of how people who are dying are contracting. They're getting more stiff. And that's what happens to you when you're low energy and you're stressed out and you're just thinking too much. You're just going deep into your own spiraling thoughts. You're just overthinking about overthinking. And that makes you more stiff, more contracted, and unable to grow and move. And what Jack does is that he stays curious about certain things. He looks for the things that he can play with, that he can interact with, so that he can grow and expand and be flexible. Not just be stiff, but be flexible with things, be perceptible. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but being able to have open arms, open hands. And sure, you might lose some stuff, right? You might lose some stuff when you're, this is the amazing concept, is that when you are living your life with a closed hand, you will not lose the stuff that you already have. So it's there, sure. But you will also not receive the things that could be better than what you already have. Now, when you live your life with an open palm, yes, you might lose things. Things can be taken away from you. But at the same time, you are opening yourself to better things that could come, which you wouldn't have received if you just live it with a closed hand. So I think that's a very great insight, to be more curious, to be ever expanding, to not be stiff, be more flexible. 7 is cross-train your identities. That's what Jack talked about, because he's, again, multifaceted. He's doing content creation, he's a writer, he's also an entrepreneur, he's also a spiritual guide, a performance coach, and a football player. And I asked him, how do the other aspects of his life help him with his business? And he just shared how football is very connected with how he leads retreats. Because when you're in football and someone is demotivated and they get hit or they feel like they're down, you need to lead them, because he's the quarterback, and so he needs to be more vocal with how he communicates with his teammates. And it's the same thing that he applies with his retreats, because when people in his retreats feel overwhelmed and unmotivated, he can also be vocal and help people pick themselves up. So I think it's a great practice to look for parallels within the things that you play with, right? Your personalities, your identities, and try to cross-train them. The 8th lesson is, don't put anyone on a pedestal. And this is something that took me a long while to learn personally, because I like idolizing people, because I never had a father. I never met my dad. He left before I was born, and my mother hid my identity. I was actually, my identity was faked, not just hidden. It was faked. And I was registered to another woman's name. And so I always had this lack in myself. I had a lack of role models. And so whenever I met someone who was a little bit extraordinary, just a little bit extraordinary, I would look up to them and I would put them in a pedestal and I would try to be like them, you know. But what the problem with that is, when you put someone above you, you are subconsciously putting yourself below people as well. And so you're putting limits on yourself on who you could be. But when you don't put people on the pedestal and you treat them as individuals, what Jack Moses talks about, how you see the 5-year-old person in that person who you're putting on a pedestal, then you become more respectful of who they are. You, instead of expecting things from them, you begin to be empathetic towards what they do and how they act. And I think it's just a better way of dealing with people, because you don't want to be the guy who thinks that people should be perfect, because you yourself are not perfect. I certainly know that I'm not perfect. But putting people on pedestals, it works backwards, because you think that person is perfect. And so when they show off their human side, which is the flawed side, you become disappointed. And because you put yourself below them, you start feeling sorry for yourself for admiring them, which has definitely happened to me a lot. But treating them as people and seeing them as fellow humans is very valuable. It just allows you to interact with people better. And the 9th lesson, the final lesson, is being better 4% a day, which is, turns out, it doesn't seem a lot, but it becomes 3.20, which is 325% better in just 30 days. If you aim to be 4% better every day, you will be 325% better in 30 days, which is the art of the compounding interest, right? It's crazy. You've tripled your progress just by trying to be 4% better every day. And I think that's a very strong message of how you don't need massive leaps of improvement. Just little bits every day, and things will accumulate. I think that a lot of people try to look for the right answer, when the best way to improve is to find the right questions every day and to have answers for them and refine those answers, make it better. So yeah, those are the 9 lessons that I learned from Jack in our podcast. And if you want to watch the full video of that, link is in the description. It's also going to be in the comments. If you want to read my thread about this reflection, you can also see that in the description. I hope that this video helped you, made you see that you don't always need to do the things that suck, and those other 9 lessons as well. And I hope you have a great day and a good life. Cheers.